Hello everyone and welcome to my acrylic painting demonstration evening where I'll be painting and you can be watching, perhaps doing some similar work later on. And today I'm exploring part of Istanbul and it's Cistern, Basilica Cistern. I've got some most beautiful photographs I've taken after the trip to Istanbul recently. We've got fantastic columns of various styles from different parts of Mediterranean. Got slightly different designs of them, and they are reflecting almost at the base inlay of water, which doubles the size, and that fantastic reflection extends that length of the shapes. I actually have got two photographs, and one has a little bit more elongated landscape view. The other one I've got a bit more extra space for the ceiling. And I'm thinking my composition, I'm planning kind of how I'm considering building this view is combining the two images. I quite like the silhouette of one of the columns which appears on my one photograph. And I do love that elongated stretch, but perhaps again with slightly stretched view, perhaps composition to a square. So that's my plan so far. So I might just place one of those images here for now. And have that move them about when as I'm starting building the shape. Now, if I were to do a square composition, I think if I definitely have the left-hand side corner, because I definitely want to have that element of the silhouette of the column. The rest, I can make my decision later how far I want to go. Is it going to be a more rectangle shape? Is it going to be more of a square shape? So if I were to start from this corner, and then I can make my final decision, perhaps trim the image here or a little bit further out. So I'm using a dark violet background. I actually mixed white, ochre and violet together. So most of my image got loads of darker tones and shadows, and that's what will help me to build up on light and middle tones and those beautiful reflections. So it's already given me a lot of support having that darkness. Now on my palette, I have some white. I've got some lovely warm colors, cadmium yellow, ochre, orange, and crimson. Also got some violet, and I have a little bit of black. I tend to start sketching with loads of light colors, but and some warmer colors if I'm doing something working on a violet background. But I'd like to start with something darker today because there are loads of extra darkness, and I really want to work on that first. And also any dark lines will actually support me because there are loads of shadows on the columns and arches. So that darker tone, that darkness will be part of my painting. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to use my violet in quite a runny way, and I'm going to add some black to it. Okay, I'm going to keep the color, the paint quite moist, so I can have the softness of the strokes while I'm sketching the overall shapes. So let's start with this base of the column first. Also, on the photograph, it appears quite dark, just black-like. But I'd like to have a little extra light on it, perhaps just a very gentle coolness of the light. If the rest of my picture will have a lot of warmth, perhaps this is going to be a good segment to have a little bit of coolness. So I'm going to have some basic structure to the column, just to perhaps just identifying some of the proportions, some of the widths of that complex shape. Let's just get that's showing. Okay, I've got loads of ovals, loads of shadows. Just want to get the silhouette of it, but at the same time, I'm planning ahead. Perhaps getting some of the elements of the column highlighted. Okay. The shape takes quite a bit of space, and that's why I also want an extra color there eventually. But it also adds a mystery to the space. I just make this a little steeper. Might have those as ovals coming in. Parts of the base of the column might be finally it's standing on some sort of pedestal, which has more of a box shape. Okay, maybe another last little step here. And I think I can just about, through the darkness of the photograph, just about, I'm not sure if you can see it, see a corner turning here. Okay. So my eye line, kind of the line of horizon, is going to be somewhere here. That's why I have my perspective lines just going gently down this way first, yeah, and they're getting sharper and sharper if I'd have been going higher. Okay, and they started to go, so they're going up that way, and the lower from this line, I'm gonna have some lower openings for my ovals, wide openings for my oval here. Okay, so that's almost my straight segment here. Okay. Right, next, just tweak tiny bit of the perspective here, just to have to step aside, just to tweak it gently. Right, next, let's have a look. I'm going to start with this photograph and look for the line of horizon. As I said, it's somewhere against this space, and it will be going all the way across for the base of my basilica. So if I were to place that line somewhere here, and let's divide my board and a good, right, if I'm going to just use it for a bit extra lengths, I can always trim my final composition elsewhere where I decide to stop. So, and let's find how much space I want to have between this base of the column and this big large lit up space. So that will give me almost like not the foreground, but the nearest to that space foreground. Okay, so it's almost somewhere here. Okay, so I'm thinking of overall right hand side of the column first, and the lit up version of it on the left. It's going to be finishing somewhere here. Just while my paint is still damp, I might just wipe it off. Now, because my screen is showing slight angle to my board, the column looks like it's leaning sideways, but it's actually it's straight. It's perhaps tiny bit. I might need to pay attention to it, but it's a little bit exaggerating on the screen. Okay. But I need to pay attention to that. Okay, I can subdivide the texture on the columns because it's got different parts to it, and I'll look at that a bit more afterwards. But I'm interested to see its pair column, which is this large one. So looking at the widths, they probably will be on the same level where the water is. So they're not too far from the horizon where the water level is, probably approximately somewhere here. And I think that might determine how much space I'm going to use for my composition. So I think before I'll sketch my second column and give myself that space, I want to draw and identify some of the spaces I'm going to have here. Perhaps just looking at the shape of my large structure of the base, that might give me an approximate proportions if I wanted to follow that scale. Okay, so perhaps somewhere here. And let's work with that scale for now. There's a lot of columns, there's a lot of arches. I'm not going to be counting them all. But let's find perhaps direction of the capitals on tops of the columns. That might give me an approximate direction and space. Okay, so somewhere approximately there, that direction. Okay, and that will lead me to perhaps a capital of the column somewhere here. Okay, and it still catches on the capital of the column. Once again, let's just compare it a bit more. It's slightly, depends where I measure. If I measure on the tops of them, okay, perhaps even steeper here. Okay, maybe this one's gonna move across. Let's just try not to think of too many details, but by looking and exploring the shapes, I have more and more understanding what's going to be happening. Okay, that's maybe one. I'm not sure if it's the right size. I'm not sure if it's the right scale or how far they're going to be. But for the moment, if that is going to be an extra column. Okay. So I want to establish something I can see and I can spot. And on the opposite side, here I can see an oval. Maybe this shape of the oval allows me to see that this column could be slightly lower. This capital, sorry. Okay, maybe the column will have slightly relocated to the left. Okay, I just keep it dark just to see its shapes and outlines. And okay, and those shapes that's kind of that way, and that will give me a little more smaller and rounder shape. Okay, that's looking a little more spacious in that area rather than being slightly too tight. An earlier drawing, an earlier little sketch. Again, that's will be fine there. Okay, and so if we've got the one perspective line here, the other one is almost staying on a straight line. I think it's just gently going sideways, and all my columns will start and reach out for the arches, start to reach out for those spaces. So if I'll have an approximate playful strokes, as much as I'm interested in getting them placed quite quickly, I still haven't identified the proportions of my painting, but because this is the key element, and if I were to playfully work out the rhythm, yeah, we can't even see how many columns are there. We will be mainly working with light there. And now I can work the reflection. Okay, the reflection will be similar size. Okay, so that space is going to be the same as here. It's going to have the same width, it's going to have the same properties. Okay, and even that perspective line will be mirrored in the water, and almost straight line could be seen here. We have all these ones, so that's our perspective line for the bases of the columns. And that should give me, so if I'm looking at the spaces, okay, that's one's there, and that's a wider one, so proportion of space between each column here. I just put a rhythm, so there is no specific gaps, but the gap between this column and this one and that one will be getting wider and wider. And this is my equivalent symmetrical column on this side, so that's where this line will have to be standing together. It's looking quite a wobbly column at the moment. Okay, and that space, right, let's just double check I've got the same distance. Looks a little bit higher. Drop a tiny bit lower. That's just where it's touching the water. So it's, I'm calling it the base, but it doesn't have to be the base. It's probably just where the column is touching the water. The base of the column is under the water. Now, Cistern Chapel, Cistern Chapel, Basilica Cistern was place where they would collect the water from the mountains and use it, often fill the water up to the top of the roof, up to the ceiling, and use it in times of need, or just generally save it and only then use it. And there were very many similar spaces. The aqueducts used to bring the water to those type of buildings, deliberately planned for the water, the provision of the water. Might be just a little bit steeper here. So the level of the water here varied quite a lot. I can continue the lines of the columns. I just wanted to see some of the main ones first. Keeping the lines straight, double checking things out, not falling. Okay, so it's a very special place. As quite an atmospheric place, as Christian religion place, as the celebration of light and history. Okay, just double checking I've got my spaces right and my columns straight. I might deliberately put some of my columns maybe a tiny bit more leaning towards the center. I think this one just standing straight perfectly doesn't look as effective. But if I'll make it gently leaning, we're only talking about millimeters differences here. I think that's make the difference. So I've done one corridor first. These columns will give me, and I'll talk about the decorations and the uniqueness of the place later on as well. Just want to have perhaps some identification of basic elements, or not so much even elements, but more how the light will start reacting, because still other columns and shadows overlap, but there are some horizontal lines which will need to correspond, even if it's light or shadows, but they will have some sort of connection, if not in the middle, on the sides. Okay, just gonna make my central arch a little bit clearer so it doesn't get lost in the damp surface here. Okay. Okay, that's good. Okay, perhaps for now I'll leave this space out now. And let's have a look at the shapes here at the bottom. Again, if I'll just do an approximate rhythm of the light. And now, instead of perhaps drawing as I was doing more, looking at more structures, if I were to start planning some darks, so for example, at the base of the columns here, we have the shadows coming towards, kind of stretching out downwards, okay? But on this side, we have the shadows stretching out this way. So it doesn't have to be that specific gaps, but just how the light is reaching out. There's still a little bit of darkness here as well, but it's not as significant. Okay. So I'm now slowly starting to think about tone more than line, and that will help me to understand the space. Okay, and these ones just having more independent, shorter shadows, just on a much smaller scale. I think they're more kind of having that connection of light and darkness, quite immediate link to the base. Okay, and that might just keep that one a little lower. Okay. Yeah, it also gives us a feel of reflective light. I'll just do a little bit of lines here just to show that busyness. Okay. So that is working out. Well, it actually gives me an opportunity to see perhaps another even step. Let's see, maybe later on I maybe add another step to my base here. Just exploring the light visually and finding nuances. Right, so, and we've got a lot of these corridors of columns containing all the similar galleries. Okay, so each level, so for example, these two columns standing on one line, the next column is going to be elsewhere somewhere here. Okay, after the same distance space. So if we're talking about this column and its neighbor in symmetry, and where that space is going to be for the next column, okay, approximately somewhere here. Okay, and I could even put that column just approximately here for now, because I haven't decided where my picture is going to be stopping yet. Okay. Things will be overlapping, so that is that column, presume. Okay, because I've got this lovely tall capital here. I've got loads of elaborate shapes. I also can see a little bit on my photograph, part of the balcony. There is an entrance balcony, which overhangs perhaps. But I can remove it, or I can use it as my guide to another. I think this photograph has been taken a little bit more further into this space or similar corridor. So it looks quite similar, but it is different. So this view might give me just a little overhanging darkness, almost like a view into the room through the window. I'm not sure if that's going to be a good decision or not, or if it could be a nice way to have an archway there. I haven't decided yet. Okay. Right, I'm also considering that this might be a little bit too far, looking at proportions of other arches. So I'm balancing a few things in my mind at the moment. I think it is right, but if I'll just do it lightly, so then I can move it if I need to. Right, if I look at this arch, the same thing's going to happen for the space between those two arches, again, approximately somewhere here. So I'm going to have another column come in here, and I can build up this space. Okay. Approximately to a similar shape. And I think that's that arch as well. Okay. And the range of arches in this corridor will continue to, just want to make this one a little closer to my larger column. Okay, and that arch will come up parallel. Okay, and that one will come out parallel somewhere here, but I just need to see how far it's gonna come out, how much of it we're going to see. And so it's this arch will be mirroring how far here. Okay, and that's by deciding that space and that space, we will define our vanishing point, not our vanishing point, our perspective lines. Our vanishing point is already established once we placed these lines here. So it's supposed to be somewhere about here. If I were to continue these lines, these lines, these lines. So all of these ones are going to be here. But again, it will be much more helpful if other elements have been shaped up. Okay, so maybe the width of the column, of the arch. In my photograph, that's a little bit more stretched out, so that's where my decision on the corridors or been narrowed down, or maybe that could have been slightly wider. I think that could have been slightly wider. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a little. Okay, that will be looking better structure. So I have an option or making adjustments. Okay, that's going to be the darker tone. Or I can just make that adjustment by placing this arch, starting it slightly further out, going slightly here, and then just moving probably this space out, and perhaps okay. And perhaps this column could move slightly further out as well. Okay, so all of this is going to move. Okay, and it's slightly going to move. So that angle, just gently, that's how small the change of the angle could be to make things adjust. And that's okay. I'm quite happy to make amendments as long as that change is not affecting too much my further distant spaces. I might just stretch some of the arched spaces here. That's about it. But we'll amend my allocation of the columns because there's so many vertical lines. Again, this will be fine. I'm going to start using a little bit of tone to see that space, that negative space. Might also use wider brush. I'd love to tell you more about the history of the Basilica Cistern. But my focus on the drawing and the shapes at the moment prevent me from doing both. So let me stay focused on the main important part first, and then we'll come back to a little bit of the background. Okay, that's looking good. that shape is going to be moved maybe even further from here. Okay, to somewhere here, and that column starts there. I will use the space to light to paint over that space. So I think I'm going to move it here, and this column is going to stay. This wider column going to be relocated, and it will gain its silhouette straight away. Still going to think about this darkness above, if it will work, or if I were to paint over it and extend the color. Right, let's work on let's work on the shape and the angle. Here. Light could be extending. Okay, and that was my column, so that space is going to come here. Okay. Mhm. And a smaller column, which is just slightly hiding. It's going to have a shadow as well. And so as this column will have a little more light, but it will have some extra shadows on there as well. Okay. It's better. Those are going to be arches within spaces, okay, between the columns width-wise. Right, and let's just follow through a couple of more layers. So one, approximately another. Let me just find its height. Okay. And all I need is to find perhaps another space here. They're getting lost, so we can't even see them. No behind the columns, no behind big column or behind the volume of columns. We can't see anything here. We can't see anything again across there. So just a little tail of the space of the column here will be perhaps the last one. So yeah, the columns were collected through the whole Mediterranean, from Egypt to Rome, Greece, and brought to Constantinople. And then, so that just to save the building material, to save and make a quicker constructions. Yeah, so that was Constantinople was a second Rome, or it used to be said just relocated Rome. So all the resources were thrown at that. That's why some of the columns are of a different height and have been extended by other blocks. That's why the capitals, those decorative tops, has so many different designs. And I'd like to put it in my painting just to have an extra pattern work, a little bit more simple light, a little bit more complex light. When I started in the colors. Okay, that's okay here. That's drying. So as long as that corresponds to the height, might look and appear a little bit wobbly, but that's okay. I can work with that. And let's have a look at some of the complexity. So I'm happy with this corner now. There's still loads of elements of light, but they will be quite playful and just be tracking it through light and shadows. And here, this is where my debate is going to come in. Where do I stop my painting? I know where that column is. Perhaps that will be enough. I don't want to stop it on the column, but if I were to have a little bit of extra light here, you can see this is very much Egyptian shape type of column. It's almost like a lotus flower at the top for the capital of it. Quite a wide one. And I want to add a little more third point perspective to this column as well. Right, so that shape will slowly go under the angle, gets wider, gets narrower here. And I just make it dark altogether, less transparent. So it just reads as a shape for now. I think I'm more or less filling the whole board, so I might take the whole board. I think I might just have a little extra light exploration there. I think I'm going to stay with that. That must be a very dark space here. Okay, so that's that column, so in that same line. And I'll keep that one as a silhouette as well. Feels like it's a little falling away from me. But I need that extra angle for the stability of the composition. Then some of these spaces will start being more balanced as well. Some of these columns will go gently. If I'll make them slightly darker for now, just to see that connection of slightly leaning inwards shapes. Very, very slightly. Okay, and anything else I need to tweak in this corner? I can't see any other small openings of light and notes. There will be somewhere here. There are a number of those final arches and extra light. The lighting in the Basilica is deliberately changing every 5 minutes or so. So projector light is totally changing the atmosphere from light going from underneath up, from ceiling down, from warm to cool, to almost darkness with tiny illumination, with quite boldness. So that forest of columns is so magnificent. Really, really stunning. Okay, so it's this shape and this shape are going to be somewhere in the united space. And the way it helps me that these columns are all different. There is a rhythm and symmetry, but it doesn't have to be precise. Okay, I'll just keep it as a shape for now. Okay. In that space also create arch going a different way. Okay, any other spaces here? So the next column got a lot of light in there, but if I were to find it again, approximately. That makes sense here. Lost and found elements. And I think I'll leave the rest of the light to the actual shapes. Anything else on this corner? Again, perhaps I might even leave it to suggestion and actual follow the light when I start applying the light. So I might stop there. Anything I want in that arch? I've got lovely silhouettes of a couple of people there. So that might be good to see some of that connection as well with silhouettes. Okay, so it's not too lonely, and perhaps even in the distance I might identify another figure. Okay, I think the size of the head makes the figure extra tall when it's actually reflecting in the space. Okay, that's quite good. Right, tiny bit. What I need is to get a silhouette for my column on the left. So if I'll use my diluted violet and black, I can paint that quite quickly. Still quite a lot of background color is remaining transparent, a lot of texture, so I can see my directional lines. Where future perhaps highlights gonna go. And I can see the darker tops and lighter sides. Okay, that's overall, but it still looks quite dark altogether. I think my diluted paint might appear much paler when it's dries, so let's just increase the dark. And let's paint the sides so they're not too pale. So we see the shape much more in them. And the silhouette without over darkening it. Okay. And I think in this corner, I want to see my lines, but I also want to make overall just a gentler, darker tone in this corner, so we'll get more of a silhouette like. Okay, so my earlier lines dried well, so just doing an extra transparent wash still allows me to see the spaces here. And then finally I will top up my ridges here, but they still disappear into blended tone, which is fine. Okay. Good. That's quite good. Now it shows me a little more of that intimate interaction with the space. I'm enjoying that line, but I will play and explore if it's not there. I might have a piece of card painted over. So a piece of card placed over. So I'm intending to paint over, but make the final decision perhaps later on. So I'm going to wash my brush now, and I'm going to move on to the next stage, starting to use some tone, more defining the light, and starting to use some color as well. Right, I'm moving on to using a filbert brush now. And as I have my very dark tones and medium darks, I need to start introducing some lighter tones. Now, if I'll start introducing the most light, if I'm introducing a light tone in the most light areas, doesn't have to be full strength light, full strength light. It will slowly start giving me gentle build up of the space. I will use, I think I need a tiny bit more violet. And this violet will help me to have a solid color, to tone down my ochre, to tone down some of the lovely oranges and yellows, and start having building up the in-between lights. So let's have a look. So this is quite a dark version of ochre. I've just used a tiny bit of orange in it as well, but it will just give me that exciting deeper color. And if I were to look at my boldest color, I'm just seeing how the color is applied. If it's thick enough, if it's need more opaque qualities. I think that's good. I'm also going to look at that column in sub segments, where the light is going to change and how that light is going to be distributed. So perhaps tiny bit taller here. And I'm considering making it slightly wider. Perhaps on its left-hand side and perhaps on the right-hand side. So now my tweaking of the shapes will begin. But this time by using light and dark and using the shapes, using the blocks. Okay, I can see a little more light. It's perhaps dense in the column, that perhaps that connection to its past where it's been taken from, carried on the boats. Dragged, yeah, placed. Maybe it was stored for a while elsewhere, what the conditions were. Okay, I might just plan the light behind here. I haven't decided it's going to be the actual side of the column, or if it's going to be the light. The base of the column will be a little bit darker, but for now, I'll leave it here. Okay, and let's have a look where this similar light. While it's drying, I'll see its appearance. So let's have a look for blocks of light coming in. Okay, maybe this will have to come in up to my shadow. It doesn't look right in perspective. It's even if it will be reflection, but let's keep it there for now. You've got a lovely light behind the column. Sorry, behind the arch space. So it's going to be quite light, quite strong. So for now, I might just leave it as a suggestion. There's some more light coming out here. Okay. So I'm going slightly thicker paint. So I'm expecting the colors to dry quite strong, so more or less as they are. And then I'll navigate my way through the spaces using some more diluted paints, and its interaction with darker background will be changing. Okay, so maybe this light will start be quite playful. Okay, this column is staying dark. And this one, so I'm just trying to spot which is a column and which is a gap between, which will have a very small change in light. So go a little higher perhaps. Here we see more highlights on the capitals than on the columns themselves. So that pattern of light becomes very attractive. Mhm. That interesting light is following through. I think what I detected earlier. Just trying to pay attention a little more. Spaces. So when the process will slowly start speeding up. I'm also gently running out of my lighter color, and it means that I'll start to dilute it, which will be a beautiful blend into background color and blend into those dark shadows already sketched. So it's almost lost and found light. So if initially I was tracking where the base of the columns are, where they're entering the water, where's the other reference points going to be. Now I'm going to slowly move away from it. Okay, let's go for slightly stronger color. Maybe a little bit more golden, cadmium yellow and orange with some white. I want to see more strength of light at the front. Okay, let's stay with more intensive thicker paint. It doesn't mean I have to repeat everything I've done. In some places I will have to. Also want to see how the color is drying. That first layer is already much darker. But now I'm doing a little extra highlights, which again probably will settle much more than they are now, that they're appearing now. I'm testing the intensity of light. I might need to come back to the medium tones, testing what's darker, the columns or the spaces behind it, a bit of both. As the light behind some of those columns is more intensified. the methods of paint application will go. If you do it on a damp surface, dry surface, if you smudge it, if you bring it a little bit more solidly. Very narrow light, but is wide. So this is longer. This more diluted light. So this will be a little more diluted light. Diluted light, it means it's gonna dry darker. Okay, well, it's light and strong. Well, it's damp. Let's see that effect here. Okay. I think that's not the base of the column, but it's where the light stands in a different place. So I was just checking if that is the case, but it's nothing to do with the column. Light, projector light is positioned slightly lower. That's why I've got that repetitive mark. Mhm. Right, any other capitals here which could have slightly more light? Some will have a little bit more extra than others for various reasons. The variety, that's what's important to me. That's what will make the picture more exciting. And let's work into other capitals of the columns. Perhaps a little too light. Some of it will be much more darker. So if I were to use diluted color, then I have more opportunities to go back to those shapes as well. And I'm going to start adding a little more orange and crimson to my yellow and white. Okay, still could have a dab of violet with it. So it's a darker version of color, but I'm bringing extra warmth to it. A little bit of violet adds darkness to the color. And I want to start introducing little extra distant light for the spaces of the arches. Perhaps less precise initially, at least. Okay, maybe bring it more diluted first. So I've got further availability for a bolder, stronger color, especially maybe somewhere in the middle. Okay, it's a bit wet, so perhaps I'll come back to those shapes. And that's what I was considering. Bases here. It's quite magnificent and strong. Okay, so far they have a similar darkness. Now we'll start eventually making it varying in that darkness. Quite therapeutic painting the shapes and looking out for the spaces. Like I said, I'm going to continue painting over my balcony space or just overhanging space. Mhm. So I'm identifying the shapes which are positive and negative in a settled way. You can see some space here. That's a dark space, and this is a lighter one again. Okay, so maybe it's not this column which has some extra light, but it's actually something lower. Mhm. Let's make tiny more darker tone. This space actually benefits from having that balcony space, that shadow. Mhm. It's a nice connection here. Just comparing the colors. I think that's a little more solid. Reddish, deeper color is working well. I think it will support some beautiful darknesses within the space as well. Instead of diluting and the color and just a little bit harder to see where it's how it dries in a quick painting approach. Apologies for the colors reflecting, but they will settle down shortly in how they will dry, and we'll see that pigment through. Okay, a little more ochre and violet, so not just red. The more watery I make my paint, the easier it is to apply it in thinner lines. There's a lot of work here. Once you know which shapes you apply in your colors, it will become easier and easier to track the shapes. Okay, perhaps a little lighter shape here. And then I want it, but just want to have that connection here first. Loads of subtones to the shapes, and most of the cases I'm combining them and much less variety of those subtones. Just for now, I'm making that deliberately. Mhm. Let's make some light at the back. Paint it over my figures, but I can paint them back. Want a little extra orange there. I wonder if I were to blend it. To some darker tone. The depth is very important. Without the depth and strength of dark, we're not going to have the beautiful light. Let's give me a nice tone to compare and work with elsewhere. That's a stronger red and orange. Just want to have a little bit more cleaner color. I think some of these ones will stay stronger and deeper. in darkness and also in that connection, of course. So I was hoping they will dry slightly darker, but it means that I have gently overdone initial light. And I need to, once I've established overall placements of color, I'm slowly establishing the tones. Once I'm happy with the color, I can then mirror it, bring it across from the areas. Quite like them. The violet and red, the violet and ochre in its darker form. Quite a good dark tone here. Slightly harder to see with the reflective surface how the color comes. Just following gently, just a bit at a time. That column is dark altogether. Let's make sure it stays dark. At least at the tops, same as this one. Reflection of light in the water is much more duller. Moving from one color to another. not stepping too long in one area. Tend to work from big overall shapes, quite a lot of details to generalize in the shapes again, to working and finding more details, and so on and so forth, constantly working and whole of the painting. Let's find any other surfaces with darker reds. Mhm. Right, let's just stop for a moment and see how the colors are drying. And maybe just a tiny bit, couple more strokes of that ceiling, catching the reds, catching the reds and violets. And it's going to have a little more connections here. You can see more of the reds in the water reflection than actual in what above. Working into the shadows now with the reds, just adding some more fresh violet with it. Quite like them. Background color, but I can feel I need more darkness here, which we'll have to touch up. These columns. Very hard to stop, even if I just wanted to have a quick evaluation. You just constantly find one thing after another, which is so exciting to develop. The moment you start having more contrast, like I'm just adding some of that black, that's a black and violet together. That's makes a striking contrast. So we start to have that night look, that Byzantine connection of candlelight, mysterious shapes, the cultural, theatrical references. The drama of light. So details, then shapes of darkness, shapes of light. There's some shapes of dark, but they're much more soft. So if I'll put it diluted, see how they work. The multicultural feel because of the shapes of the variety of the shapes of the columns. Definitely something very Egyptian and Greek connected here. This one is going this way. Might have a little light of, then maybe these are the columns and my balcony, perhaps. I haven't decided yet. Still playing with that aspect. Mhm. And any other darker spaces? Seen the archways, I've seen them. It's quite similar spaces, but connections to perhaps building shadows between the columns, not just on the columns. And the darkness could come down. As well here. I start to have more and more connection and space in between each form. Just put it a little more light, which will help me with putting some lights, maybe cooler lights on that base. Mhm. I like simplicity here. Just let's step away gently. Let's see that overall view. Let the paint dry. And let's have a look at some cooler shadows here and then perhaps tweak the extra lights. I'm just squeezing a little bit of ultramarine, picking up a new brush. I want to see some ultramarine and violet for some of my gentle highlights at the front. So if I mix both ultramarine and violet, it looks dark on this palette. If I test it against my surface here, that's good. Okay, I only need a small hints of it. Maybe a little bit more on the violet side. Some of these gaps, doing the spaces. Maybe incorporated with my existing violet. Okay, this one needs a little more blue or a little bit more light. But easy to wipe things off. It's almost like a thinner gap, which just perhaps catches the light between the shapes. This little vertical part of the base. Again, just a little hint on that wall. I'm interested in how the color is going to dry. Is it going to be darker? Is it going to be lighter? I wouldn't mind keeping the existing darkness, but I do want to have the color change. Be just that board of shapes. Maybe even tiny bit of that width, showing that roundness of the shape. I just partially smudge it. Becomes less boring shape, especially such a big shape, and most importantly, it gives me more contrast to go with our lighter tones, so warmer tones. Okay. So here they got two different shapes, two different levels to them, space, but maybe a little too strong in that similarity of the width. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's dry and let's see how that will sit with the rest of the work. And let me get some extra bold, just gentle checks of stronger highlights. I think there's still quite a lot of work could be done. I might want to keep my first development more sketchy. Just need slightly more fresh white. Without any blue in it. Quite like how this column dried as it's in front of us. And perhaps this column needs to be more in front of us as well. And I'll play with that space. Okay, that's something to consider. It's diluted color, so I'm expecting it to dry darker. So it's not going to be so strong. Right, and while that one's drying, let's have a look at more exciting highlights. I think I'm going to go for cadmium yellow, a little bit of orange. If there is a little dab of ochre or any palette color, just to tone it down. Because if I were to put this color on top of, for example, my column, it becomes even stronger, and I can use a little dry brush of dry brushing. So if I wipe most of the paint off and take it off on my tissue, partially dry brush strokes will give me the texture of how this column was cut from the stone, from the marble. I think it's because of its moisture of the strokes. It's harder to see how it's settling in. So I'm a little bit guessing till it dries. There's some stronger, bolder shapes. Again, perhaps the column been dragged and transported on boats, and that connection to certain ridges and edges, particularly lovely. It is still dry and darker than expected. So until I perhaps build that thickness of the paint, I might not know. It's final. That's too much. That warms. I just want that golden light and that maybe less color, but more tone, more light. Okay, any other areas? Slightly bolder. Maybe small in quantities, but more striking. I'm also considering dropping this light a little lower. Light on the columns, there is light behind. Some of my shapes of lights are a little wobbly. So perhaps little dabs of dotting space will give some more shine to the surface, having less perfection, less perfect strokes. I just drop this light a little lower. As a little test. I think that's better. Okay, the people look giant, so let's not make them giants. Only minuscule shapes. Yeah, I think this piece on a larger scale where I've got more space to spread and pay attention to the details will be really fascinating. It slowly started to glow. I also wanted to make an area here to shine, not so much shine, but define the surface, define what's behind. It's an easier way. The silhouettes will read better if they have clearer shapes. Doesn't have to be all light, could be more of an even pattern. I think this is a bit too similar now. I just simplify it and bring some more shadows back to this area and bring some more variety. Mm. Yeah, the small tweaks of color. Really don't want to stop, as I can see so many little things which needs attention, which will make the difference. little multicolor from all my range of colors now. So I think if I'll do tiny bit more and stop. Partially now not looking at my photograph. I'm just looking for some more shapes and perhaps connection to other lights. And variations to these lights. One shape is moving from another. One light is traveling in a different way than another. Very exciting. Careful not to over exaggerate that playfulness of the light. Perhaps sometimes too uniformed spaces, but at the same time having a little bit of kind of hint for the water and that extra surface reflective qualities. I think that's quite good. And a good, quite good finishing touch of I'm glad these shapes are drying darker as well, so they're quite effective on the darker surface, but there could be easily overdone. So I'm glad they're drying a little more in a sensitive way. Right, anything else last moments? I think that will dry gently as well. Although it has some more hint of light on it from the column. So we'll dry straight here as well, so the column is not going to lose its darkness. Okay, and I think I'm going to stop for today. Any last dabs to make the symmetry happen? Okay, so I think I'm going to stop for today, and that's definitely a good piece to work on a larger scale for me. I've got a lot of potential to play with the lights and shadows, to use a little extra coolness of color, or perhaps even do a sample where I can have more combinations of coolness and warmth. So if you'd like to try some of that build up of depths and space, give it a go. Stay brave, explore the colors, and give it a go. Thank you very much for staying with me tonight, and let me know how did you get on with watching the video today, and perhaps if you do a little sample painting, let me have a look at it as well. I'd love to see that. Thank you very much, and see you again soon. Bye bye.